for joining us today. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Lee in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. The slow pace of recovery is expected to continue for the Korean economy as latest economic indicators point to sluggish growth. We take a closer look at a number of major events over the next few days and how they would affect the Korean economy. These stories and more coming right up. The Finance Ministry expects more downside pressure on the Korean economy in the coming months as various factors continue to weigh on the economy's growth prospects. Our Shin Se-min starts us off.
A government report shows Korea's economy is struggling under the weight of feeble production and investment. It also warns there will likely be more sluggish growth for the foreseeable future. In its monthly economy assessment report called the Green Book, the Finance Ministry said that despite a temporary boost in spending spurred by a government-initiated discount event called Korea Sale Festa, the pace of recovery remains weak. However, the ministry report adds that uncertainties from abroad are of even greater concern, particularly from the United States and Europe. The number of newly hired workers in the manufacturing sector, considered a key pillar of the Korean economy, fell by 115,000 on year in October, continuing its downward trend for the fourth straight month. Korea's combined output across all sectors fell 0.4% in October compared to the month before, largely due to the global recall of Samsung's Galaxy Note 7 smartphone and the longest ever strike by unionized cargo truck drivers. Over the same period, production in mining, manufacturing, and energy slid 1.7%, while output in the service industry edged down 0.2%. But there was some improvement in regards to private consumption. It spiked more than 5%, mostly thanks to the success of the Korea Sale Festa event. Looking forward, the ministry said the government-wide response measures to uncertainties at home and abroad will be strengthened and that economic policy measures for next year will be arranged soon. Shin Se-min, Business Daily.
And this gloomy outlook also extends to the job market. Landing a job this year was tough enough for many, but projections show that things could get worse in the year to come. Our Lee has more.
The employment situation in Korea is not looking so bright for next year as risks loom ahead. According to Korea Labor Institute, the country's unemployment rate is projected to reach 3.9% in 2017, higher than the 3.7% this year. That will make it the highest level in 15 years. While specific figures have not been released yet, Korea Statistics Promotion Institute projects unemployment is highly likely to increase mainly among young people aged 15 to 29. Experts say this is largely due to a slowdown in the manufacturing sector. Output in October saw a 1.4% dip compared to the same time last year. Lackluster performance was also reflected in the workforce, with the number of full-time workers dropping by about 83,000 on year in the third quarter compared to the increase seen the same time last year. With sagging economic conditions projected to carry over to next year, Korea Labor Institute says an increasing number of people are expected to start their own businesses in order to create opportunities of their own. Lee, Business Daily.
Meanwhile, Korea's working-age population is set to begin contracting beginning next year. According to Statistics Korea, the number of economically active citizens between the ages of 15 and 64 came in at 37.6 million this year. That accounts for 73% of the total population. But within 50 years, that ratio is projected to drop to less than 48%. Statistics Korea said the aging trend is set to expedite starting in 2020 as the baby boom generation reaches 65 years in full force. Growing economic risks are creating a bigger drag on the Korean economy that's already struggling with falling exports and low consumption. Now, such risks include the impeachment vote on President Park Geun-hye on Friday, as well as some major central bank meetings scheduled for this week and the next. Take a look.
The National Assembly is set to vote on a bill to impeach President Park Geun-hye on Friday. In order for the vote to pass, it needs the backing of a 2/3 majority from the 300-member assembly. If Parliament votes to impeach President Park, she'll be immediately suspended of her post, leaving the Prime Minister as acting president, while the Constitutional Court deliberates on whether to uphold the impeachment. Only after all of this will the government be able to decide on who will lead Korea's economic policies, stepping away from the current power void. The vacuum was triggered earlier last month after the head of the Financial Services Commission, Im Jong-yong, was named by President Park to replace Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho. But the main opposition Minju Party has refused to hold a confirmation hearing, saying that it can't accept the candidate picked by the president, whom they say should step down to take responsibility for the ongoing political scandal. Outside of the country, the ECB will meet on Thursday, while an FOMC meeting will take place next week to finally decide on whether to pull the trigger this month. So what impact will all these major events have on the Korean economy?
For more on this, Professor Kim Se-won from Ewha Women's University joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so depending on the outcome of tomorrow's impeachment vote, how will the country's financial market be affected?
Well, it looks that the president's impeachment possibilities already reflected in the stocks and bonds market. So there won't be a big shock to the financial market in the short run. But however, we have different situation in the long run because yesterday KDI reports that the fourth quarter's economic growth is almost 0% on quarterly basis. So this slow economy progress has been pretty much affected by political situation. So if that situation goes on further, there is a possibility of the downturn of the financial market.
Now, I think one of the most pressing tasks would be establishing a new economic leadership. And by that, we mean appointing the country's finance minister, who also serves as the deputy prime minister for economic affairs, right?
Well, there is a strong demand for new finance minister's appointment from both of the government and private sector. And foreign government wants to talk to Korean government over global issues, but they do not know who they need to talk to. So we have to have a new finance minister as soon as possible.
Now, so after tomorrow, do you think will the government be able to address and deal with some of the key major economic issues?
Well, as we talked about, this is the moment that Korean economy downturns further. So without the leadership of the finance minister, it is very hard to increase the government expenditure, which will be a very important preemptive buffer to Korean economy. So major economic policy decisions will be delayed until new finance ministers start to work.
All right, well, shifting our focus a little bit, the ECB is also expected to decide the fate of its extensive bond buying program during its meeting on Thursday. So what can we expect from this meeting, and how will the outcome affect the Korean economy?
Well, Eurozone became more unstable thanks to Italia's political unrest. So European central banks should be providing more expansionary monetary policy by extending bond buying program. But the decision of European central banks on Korean economy is kind of limited because compared to that of the Federal Reserve decision, it is something like a small wave before the big wave.
Now, just you mentioned with the FOMC meeting set for next week, what's your outlook on the Fed's rate hike? Do you think this is going to happen?
Well, the almost unanimous expectation of the market is 0.25% interest rate hikes by Federal Reserve in the next week. But more concern comes in the next year, 2017, because there is a possibility that Federal Reserve will be increasing interest rate more than twice.
Okay.
But recently, Trump's government decided to increase fiscal expansion by spending more money from government. That means there will be inflation pressure from the United States. So if that really happens in the next year, there is a possibility that a Federal Reserve increase interest rate more than twice.
Now then, what impact will the rate hike have on the Korean economy?
Well, if U.S. Federal Reserve increase the interest rate, the Korean market interest rate increases automatically, regardless the effort of the Bank of Korea. So if that happens, Bank of Korea decide between whether to let Korean interest rate goes up or decrease the interest rate fighting against the recession of the economy.
So with growing domestic and global uncertainties, how should Korea work to minimize the negative impact that these critical events are going to have on the Korean economy?
Well, I think Korean government has to have a plan A and plan B for all possible outcomes of the impeachment and US Fed decision. For that purpose, as I said, the leadership of finance minister is very important. So I believe that the Congress leaders should be agreed on all party agreed finance ministers. So by appointing that new finance minister, we can have the leadership of economic policy.
Well, for now, all eyes are on tomorrow's vote.
Right.
Right. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
very
in
much.
today. Let's now get a quick check of how the markets fared here in Seoul today. Both the Kospi and the Kosdaq ended the trading day higher. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi closed up nearly 2%, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq ended more than 1% higher at 584. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean won strengthened against the greenback, trading at 1,158. This on the back of a strong U.S. market rally on Wednesday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P 500 had both hit fresh highs. The Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq all added more than 1% on the strength of telecom and property stocks, as well as reflationary expectations from a Trump presidency. Meanwhile, major European stocks extended their gains for a third straight day. Sales of imported cars here in Korea are expected to fall this year for the first time in 7 years. According to data from Korea Automobile Importers and Distributors Association, slightly over 205,000 imported vehicles have been sold in the country through November, down 6.5% from the same time last year. Now, if the lower numbers continue through the end of the year, it would mean the first on-year fall for imported car sales since 2009. Industry experts say the drop is due to weaker demand for diesel vehicles and sales bans on certain Volkswagen and Audi models in the wake of the emissions scandal. The Fair Trade Commission will file criminal complaints against former and current executives of Volkswagen's AG's Korea office and fine them nearly $32 million for making false advertisements on their vehicles. The antitrust watchdog claims the German automaker falsely advertised from 2007 to last year that its cars sold here in Korea met the European Union's strict Euro 5 emission standards. The latest move comes just months after the Korean government suspended most of Volkswagen sales in the country over emissions problems. The amount fined is a record high imposed by Korea for false advertising. Here in Korea, whiskey has transformed itself to suit a mass market. As liquors and the bars that serve them deal with dampened demand, whiskey brands are fighting back by enhancing their lines. And our Eunice Kim shows us that these spirits feature lower alcohol content.
W Signature by Windsor. It's the latest offering by the country's top whiskey brand. Diageo Korea says its 35% alcohol content goes down smoother. Not to be outdone, number 2 Golden Blue has also released a lower alcohol option. Phantom, the original, with an equal 35% alcohol per volume that the company says is great for highballs, paired with tonic water or other mixers. This, as William Grant & Sons Korea earlier rolled out a 36.5-degree green jacket, which it says sold more than 100,000 of in the first month.
We're releasing our new product as we see the drinking culture changing from simply getting drunk to enjoying the drinks.
In fact, data from Korea Wines and Spirits Importers Association show that demand for strong whiskey with content above 40 degrees was down 17% in the first 9 months of this year, while demand for those below 40 degrees was up 48%. Along with the lighter options, we're also seeing their size be miniaturized. From 750 milliliters down to 500 or 450, whiskey is coming in sizes as small as 200 milliliters.
We wanted to make whiskey more approachable so people can enjoy it in private spaces, even alone.
Following in the footsteps of soju last year, whiskey producers are adapting to the needs of drinkers who seek less damaging spirits that can be enjoyed in the comfort of one's home. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that brings us to the end, but we'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.